You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hey guys, it's me, Mighty Blue once more. This is episode 477 of the Mighty Blue podcast, and we've got another big show for you again today. A friend of the show, Vegas, who I've mentioned before, suggested I talk with one of his hiking partners, Big Willy Dawg, otherwise known as Bill Zyckowski. Bill is retired law enforcement, and he needed something like a thru-hike to give himself a bit of a kick up the backside after his retirement from work. Bill will be sharing his story with you shortly. Then, both Beth and Dave are on once more, with Beth now within days of the start of her thru-hike with her stepson Andrew. She'll be driving across the country as you hear this on Thursday morning, then starting the trail with Andrew within the week. And Dave's in the Smokies, where we've had a few issues with him getting service. I caught up with him late Wednesday at Crosby Knob Shelter, where he was at last able to find a signal. Then, and for the very last time, Emily Leonard's happy hiking comes to a close, with a Katahdin climb and a few words of self-reflection at the end. I've got to say, I'll miss doing these books, though I have a potential plan to read other books within the channel, just not on this podcast. When I can form the idea more fully, I'll let you know, and maybe your book can be read on the Hiking Radio Network sometime in the future. Before we move on, it would be remiss of me not to mention some very sad personal news. I mentioned briefly a few months ago that my ex-wife, Diane, needed some prayers for some serious health issues. I didn't give any details of those health issues, and I won't now, but I'm afraid that she passed away last Thursday. As you know, hers is the voice that introduces this podcast, and I've no intention of changing that, though hearing her voice this week as I was editing was especially jarring for me. Rest in peace, Di. You'll be missed. So let's move on now and meet Bill Zyckowski, or Big Willy Dawg. We've got another friend of our friend Vegas on the show this week. This is Bill Zyckowski, or Big Willy Dawg. Hey Bill, thanks for being on the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. I really appreciate it.
Now, you're really on to talk about the thru-hike that you did in 2023, but I understand that you're back on the trail right now. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. I jumped back on the trail January 28th. This hike was going to be a little bit different for me. I wasn't sure how long or how far I would go. But I made it to Roan Mountain Highlands in Tennessee, and I jumped off because my son joined the Army yesterday, so I wanted to say goodbye to him.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But I made it's once you're off trail, it's hard to get back on. I'm going to admit that. So I'm probably thinking about maybe jumping back on in like the end of August, to be honest. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see. We'll come back to it in a minute because I want to ask you what the trail's like in the south. So we'll come back to that in a minute. But first, let's go back a couple of years and get to why you got out there in the first place. Because when we spoke before, you told me that you were retired law enforcement, and like many cops do when they retire, you spent a lot of time in the bars and sitting on your backside. Is that a fair summary of what we talked about?
It's definitely fair for me. I have to say I fell in that trap. I retired. At the time I was financially stable, so I wasn't really needed to go back to work. But I found myself in the bars a lot, just being very unproductive. And of course, my ex-wife would always remind me what a poor example I am to my two sons.
Of course you would.
And, but the weird thing is, I would come home at night and I'd watch the early YouTubers in January hiking. This now is 2023. Right. And I got infatuated with them. I'd watch them every night. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I could try that, and eventually I went to a local REI store. They geared me up and I just jumped on a train in Trenton, New Jersey and took it to Georgia. And I just told everyone in New Jersey that I was going to hike Georgia. Just so, just in case I failed, I could say, well, I hiked Georgia, like I said, but my intention was to thru-hike, to be honest.
It's funny, it's one of the things that people do seem to be worried about, the thought of failure when they start, when frankly, the anticipation should be you're likely to fail when you start.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's just, some of us are so goal driven. Like, for example, if I'm going to clean a room, I'm going to clean it totally in the correct way. And the same thing with jumping on the trail. Okay, you committed to hiking it. You should be committed to finishing it. Although, like you said, that's easier said than done, because I nearly quit many, many times on the trail. And, of course, I guess we'll get into it later, but the trail family had a big part of, me staying on, and people encouraging me at home also was a big part.
Now, by the way, I don't want retired law enforcement to think I'm dissing cops in any way. I come from a police family. My father was a policeman and my brother was a policeman. And I'm afraid sitting on his backside in a bar was one of my brother's faults for quite a while as well. So, I identify with that, and I was thinking about it, and I know how easy it is to get into, because in my business also, I was a heavy drinker as well. So it's easy to do, isn't it? You go into a bar, you start drinking, and it makes it tough.
Yeah, patterns,
So the YouTube and stuff like that got you fired up to go out there. But as a youngster, you've been an outdoorsy sort of guy most of your life, haven't you?
I always loved the outdoors. I'm more of a hunter fisherman type of guy.
Right.
And I have done day hikes, like 8 to 10 mile loops, with my sons, but I was never a long distance hiker ever. So it was something totally new to me. And I learned kind of as I went along, especially through Georgia.
Yeah.
You get to those stores and you change things out for lighter and lighter. So it was a process for me to learn. No doubt.
Yeah, I bet. It. But you know what? It's a great way to learn. The only way to learn is to actually do it in the first place, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. To get out and do it. No doubt.
And you mentioned an ex-wife and you mentioned a son. Did your family and your friends encourage you in this, or did they think you were kind of crazy?
Yeah, I definitely thought that I was kind of crazy, because I did hike with my sons. They know what kind of physical shape I was in, which was pretty bad. So when I told them I was going to attempt the thru-hike, they were like, okay, Dad, we'll see you in about a week and a half. You'll be back home. But so, yeah.
Don't you hate that, though?
Yeah. Well, I can be honest, the first trail family I had, that I met at Springer Mountain Shelter, a funny thing, one of the guys was keeping a journal that he sent home. And then I got to know him about after a month. He invited me to his journal. I read back on his day one. And they said that I wasn't going to make it. So, I mean, they were like, there's this crazy Far Eastern European guy, with a weird name he's not going to make it. Because, I had like a camelback, I had all this primitive stuff on, But I learned eventually as you went on. You learned very quickly, actually. That
trip to REI you mentioned, that was one visit. You basically got everything you needed at that time. Did somebody advise you, or did you just see what you saw and get what you saw on YouTube?
Yeah, no, yeah. They had an employee there that actually thru-hiked in like 2007.
Nice.
So he had knowledge, but I think he was still stuck in the old ways on some equipment. But he did do me, solid on the backpack, the sleeping bag. So he did do good things, but there's a lot of things that were outdated that he gave me. A little bit heavy too, but I learned, yeah.
And when you said you told people you were just going to do Georgia, did you tell anybody you were going to go the whole way, or was it you just kept the whole thing to yourself?
Yeah, I definitely kept it to myself because I'm so afraid of failing. So I definitely kept it to myself, and I told everyone I was going to hike Georgia. Hang on.
What do you mean you were afraid of? You actually were afraid of failing, were you?
Yeah.
Who are you failing?
Nobody, just myself. I guess it's just it's on me.
Right. Yeah.
But as I got along, I got further and further. More people started encouraging me, and it gave me a lot of motivation to go forward. Certainly.
That's great, and it's lovely that when people get see that you're doing it, it's a wonderful thing. And being overweight, as I was on both of my big hikes, it's not exactly optimal for a thru hike, especially for Georgia, is it? Did you prepare physically for the trail, or did you just let it kick you into shape?
Yeah, I have to be honest. I let it kick me into shape, and that's not the right thing. Because, I made YouTube videos on how to prepare, a beginner hiker like me. And certainly, being in shape is going to help you tremendously a lot, because when you're out of shape and overweight, you're more prone to get injured also. So, I struggled with that plantar fasciitis, in the beginning.
Sure.
I struggled with a lot of things, the sore knees and all that, but I just walked through it. I pushed myself to walk through it. And so, yeah, definitely being in shape helps you a lot in the start.
And you're early 50s, I think?
Yeah, I'm 54 now, so I was 52.
Yeah, we count that as early 50s, definitely early 50s.
Yeah.
I'm going to be early 70s until my 75th birthday.
Wow, you look the same age as me. It's amazing.
Trust me, I'm not, and I feel a whole lot older as well. So you got a train to Georgia, and you made your way to Amicalola. Were you nervous? At that stage, were you nervous, or were you just all in and thinking, I'm going to get this done?
Yeah, I was definitely nervous, but, I watched a lot of YouTubers. It's weird to say that. Like, I felt like I kind of been there because I follow so many of them. And I'm always having a little bit of adventurous blood in me, too. I've always been adventurous, but I definitely was nervous because it's totally unknown, like I didn't know it'd be so physical, and physical leads to mental strains, and I wasn't prepared for that. I gotta be honest with you. Yeah, so, but that's what we got the trail family for.
That's right. Well, how did you cope with those mental strains, and the physicality was causing you the mental stress, or was it just the whole thing was just too difficult to start with?
It was just difficult both ways for me. I view it as like there's a mental side and a physical side. And sometimes on one side I really struggled, and I used the other side to carry me through. So if I was physically struggling with like plantar fasciitis, I'd use my mental strength to carry me through. Or it could flip, you know what I mean? I'd be mentally struggling, and I use my physical ability to get up that mountain, you know what I mean? It kind of like weird, like when I got to, initially it was mental. My mental strength got me to Pennsylvania. And I would say after Pennsylvania it was all physical, because I was fried, you know what I mean? I was burned. And, yeah,
I know the feeling. It's definitely stuff out there.
Yeah,
but you talked about friends and family expecting you to be home in a week. But one thing our friends back home have to acknowledge is when we're about 500 miles in, isn't it? Somewhere around Grayson Highlands, and you're still moving forward, and they must be thinking that perhaps you might be serious about this. Is that what happened? Is that what happened to your friends? Because I think there was something you said about you called your ex-wife and she talked about your son. Was it at school?
Yeah, you hit the nail right on the head. It was probably when I got to Virginia, and my sons were amazed that I made it that far. And like you said, I talked to my ex-wife on the phone. She goes, your sons are bragging about you to their friends, like in the gym and stuff like that. My dad. And they're like, oh, you can see him on YouTube. And that made me really, really proud. And I got to say, that really pushed me forward. So when I was in Pennsylvania, lying on the side of the trail, trying to get up the mountain, just exhausted, I used that to push me forward. I mean, I think social media had a big part of me finishing, because so many people were encouraging me. And I was so thankful for that. And I felt like I was, although I'm doing it for myself, I felt like I was doing it for them, because everyone was so proud of me, especially my sons. My sons were really proud of me.
And you mentioned a YouTube channel. Was that where you were getting the support, or was it also on Facebook and Instagram?
Sure, it was all of them. Yeah, definitely. Right. The YouTube just started out as just something like, because, back then I was getting thrown in Facebook jail a lot. So I was like, okay, I got to do something safer, because I wanted to document my hike. So that's when I jumped on YouTube and I started documenting it. And as further I got, kind of the more people that were following me, and they were encouraging me. Complete strangers, and people live encouraging.
People hike the trail through people like you. It's amazing that happens. And I know that people, when they followed my hikes, I podcasted my 2019 hike, and I don't know about you, I felt a sort of obligation about halfway through, because I thought, I can't drop this now, because it's quite labour intensive, isn't it, to put something out all the time. Did you find that you were actually then doing posts and videos because you had a following?
I would say back then, not so much, but definitely now. Definitely now. And I try to make it as best I can now, where, I would say, about halfway through my 2023 hike, it started mattering. Yeah. That's when I'd be at the hostel. Everyone is out trying to, getting Cokes and burgers, and I'm on my bunk bed, trying to edit and, answer, so I don't try to get too many trolls, and I'm trying to keep everything, nice. But that doesn't work anyway. The trolls come at you anyway. But
they're going to be there.
Yeah, it is a bit labor, I got to say. You know what I mean? And I do appreciate the YouTubers now. I know what they went through to put out their product when I was watching them, because now I'm doing it too. How
often were you posting on YouTube then?
I was doing it like every 5 days or so.
No,
basically from I was trying to do it by state, but some states like Virginia, it was taking me. I had like 28 videos of Virginia alone, so I was trying to do it like a week, once a week. I'm not nothing fancy. It wasn't too much work, but it was enough.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, a guy's been on our show and he's done the 80, I think 6 or 7 times. Craig Hawk Mains. He posts something every day when he's on trail, which is just remarkable to me how he gets that stuff out just all the time.
Amazing. You're right. Just absolutely amazing.
And I know that you obviously got to know Vegas as a young lad, but tell us about fitting in with the youngsters you met out there, because you're in your mid-50s. I was in my early 60s when I did my first hike, and that I was shocked how we all assimilated, whatever our age, whatever we did. And I'm sure that was a similar experience for you. Talk to how gratifying that is when you find yourself in a group of people who don't give a shit about what you did, don't care who you support, don't care what your religion is, don't care whether you're gay or straight or how old you are. How was that for you?
It's an amazing thing. Like you said, on the trail, on the Appalachian Trail, as long as you're a good person, it doesn't matter. Nothing else matters. And you're going to bond with everybody, and everyone's going to look out for one another too. It's like a level of love I can't express, and it's addicting, and I think that's why I go back to the Appalachian Trail today, because we all love one another and we all look out for one another, and that's very addicting for me. So, as far as Vegas, Vegas was like 30 years old and I was 52. I was old enough to be his father, but well, he's a different character on his own. He's an incredible character.
Yes, he is.
The trail transformed him, not to go off subject, but, he had something tattooed on his palms, a Y and a no. So he thought if someone asked him something, he would just hold up a hand. And he ended up becoming so popular on the trail, like a mayor. He knew everybody. He had everyone's phone number. And it's just amazing. And, it doesn't matter if I was law enforcement or I was hiking with, someone that was transgender. It doesn't matter. We all loved one another. And as we do today, we still all love one another today.
Sure.
It's amazing. It's an amazing utopian society type of thing. I can't describe it, but it's just amazing. Even on my new hike this year, I made some incredible friends. and we're friends forever. I mean, yeah, forever. We have a group chat. We talk every day. And this is we hiked together 2 years ago.
Sure.
And I got to unmute it because Vegas just keeps blabbing. You know what I mean? But that's the love we have for one another. That's the love we have for one another. And we're always looking out, for each other's families and stuff like that. So it's great. And we visit each other all the time, too.
I know. That's so cool. I actually went and had a drink with Vegas down he's at Anna Maria Island, about 30 or 40 miles away from where I live. I drove down there. It's out of respect for somebody and out of, even though I didn't hike with him, he was a guest on my show. He's such a great character. I really enjoy spending time with him as well, and I'd always go and have a drink with somebody who wants to have a drink with me. So and I've had a drink with quite a few listeners on the show.
He's an amazing character. You know what I mean? I could talk about him. I don't want to turn this show into a Vegas show. It's about me now, but I had some incredible moments with him. He was never, he never got down. He was never negative. And that's where my problem was. He would always uplift me. When we were in Maine, we received so much rain. He just laughed at it all. He was smiling and laughing, and just an amazing kid. Just an amazing.
So what was the trail giving you out there? Because you said to me when we spoke the other day that the trail was giving me victories every day. Tell us about one or two of those victories you feel that the trail was giving you.
Yeah, on a background, when you're back in the civilian world, just sitting in a bar drinking, there's no moral victories. Every day is the same defeatist lifestyle. When I jumped on the trail, you wake up at the campsite, there was a certain distance you had to walk every day. And, you had to walk with it in weather, in heavy terrain and rocks. And, whenever I did that, I finished that day, it was like a moral victory. It was psychologically very healthy for me. Of course, you had to repeat it about 168 times every day.
That's right.
But every day was a victory. And, and we celebrated together. Like I said, you're with your trail family. We all hike separately, but at the end of the day, we meet up. And I was usually the last one in, but it was always a great feeling to walk in, having accomplished that physical task of walking that trail. Psychologically, it's very, very healthy for you, I think.
Were there days when you didn't make it?
I gotta say, you had to make it. You had to. Now, there were days where I struggled, and I laid down on the ground, but you had to make it. You had to. Otherwise, you're gonna sit out in the rain and just die of hypothermia or something. I'm, exaggerating a little bit, but
no, you're not. You know what? You're not. Because I've often said to people on trail, there are two options. If you fall over, you either get up and go on, or you stay there and die.
Yeah.
So they're your options. So the hypothermia thing is absolutely correct. You just got to get up and go. And I would imagine, knowing that you had this strong bond with your family, that it made you want to get there even more. Because had you been hiking by yourself, you could have stopped to the side of the path, couldn't you? And just put yourself into your tent, and then you would have been without people.
Yeah. I had, trail family help me. I remember one time, I was laying down on the side of the trail, and one of my friends, Pat Townsend, his name was Typical, he actually hiked back to get me, you know what I mean? And, which was amazing love, you know what I mean? That was like my first lesson, like how strong our love relationship is with one another, all the other hikers, that he would hike back. Because, initially when I hiked, I thought it was like every man for himself. It kind of starts off that way,
sure.
You know what I mean? But then you meet people, and then it becomes about the group, you know what I mean? So the love out there is just amazing. And, there was plenty of times I wanted to quit, but I didn't. I remember my first time was Clingman's Dome, 200-mile mark. And I remember I was kind of hiking alone. I really didn't have the trail family yet. And I was like, okay, I'm going to get to Clingman's Dome, and I'm going to take that road down back to the highway, and I'll just hitchhike. But when I got to Clingman's Dome, it was really weird. There was an older couple up there, and they offered me an apple and an orange. And I accepted it, and I ate it, and something happened in my brain where it just totally changed everything. Maybe I was deficient in some kind of vitamin C or something, I don't know, but my thought process changed. I was like, okay, let me just go to the next shelter, and I'll take it another day, see how I feel. And of course, that shelter was downhill because you're not at the highest point, so that was good. Yeah. But it's rocky, you know what I mean? The trail's rocky, but... so I'm so thankful, I pushed. You got to push on. You have to push on. We're all going to have thoughts of quitting. You just have to push through it. You know what I mean? Easier said than done, but you have to do it.
That was your trail magic. And funny enough, I got some trail magic that day as well. Not your day, but my day when I was in Clingman Zone first time. Somebody offered me a candy for no reason. They weren't talking with me. They just walked up to me and said, would you like a candy? They gave me 3 or 4 candies, which I put in my pocket, and I forgot all about them. By the time I got to Clingman's Dome, I was ready to fill up my water bottle, only to find there was no place to fill with water at Clingman's Dome. So I had no water to get to the next shelter. And as I started walking down, I started panicking because I didn't have any water. You know how terrible that can feel.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I suddenly remembered I had these 4 candies in my pocket, which this random guy had given me earlier that day. I started sucking on those candies, and the liquid in my mouth lasted just about in time to get the shelter. When I got to the shelter, though, I must have had about 3 litres of water. I was dying up there. But it's that trail magic you get. Somebody gives you something unexpectedly, and it works for you and changes. That's a great little story you had there. I love that.
Yeah, think about what you listened to. It's really love that pushed me through the trail. It was all that love, not just from the hikers, but hostel owners, trail angels, shuttle drivers. It's just a great, gigantic love affair that I missed so much when we're home. I think that's where a lot of the post-trail depression comes in. You miss that love.
Well, we don't replace it, do we? That's the problem. I think that's probably why. And did friends, forget the trail funny people on trail, did the friends you have at home, your drinking buddies, whatever, your mates, friends, your family, did they notice a difference in you, quite apart from the weight loss, obviously?
It was a great sense of accomplishment for me. It was probably my greatest sense of accomplishment. Now, I was an Army infantry soldier. I was in law enforcement over 20 years. But for some reason, the Appalachian Trail was a greatest accomplishment for me. Because the weird thing is I could have quit at any time, but I didn't. With law enforcement and Army, I had to work. I couldn't quit. Sure. But this thing I could have quit, and I did it, and I went forward. So, they definitely noticed a different Bill, Definitely. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done.
And, I kind of touched upon this originally when we first spoke, and I'm not sure we actually resolved it at the time, but is Big Willy Dawg very different from Bill?
Maybe it's my fun side for sure. The Big Willy Dawg is my fun side. Well, although if you watch my YouTube, I'm negative a lot, but it's more in humor. I got to be honest. The humor comes off a little bit of negative. I That's a hard question.
Because you did say the trail disciplined you.
Yeah, it definitely. Yeah, in the civilian world, I had no discipline for sure. So it disciplined me. It stripped me down, and certainly, I came home much more disciplined. Certainly.
So Katahdin, you got there, and I don't know, it's a fantastic feeling, the whole thing. But as you got closer to the end, because you were loving it so much, were you wanting to finish, or were you kind of dreading finishing at the same time?
Yeah, good question. So for me, I think for the most of us, we were ready for it to be done. So in 2023, and I'm not sure how factual it is, but Mount Washington recorded the most rain in July of 2023, and we were in New Hampshire and Maine at that time.
Right.
So we were just getting saturated and, falling down in Maine on the rocks. It was just, we were all ready to be done. I'm pretty sure, except for one person, that was Vegas. Vegas wanted to last forever out there. He was going to go backwards. He was going to do that yo-yo thing. Of course he did. But even Vegas had, I think he was ready, by the time we got there. And by some miracle, though, when we got to Katahdin, it was some of the finest weather I've had on the whole trail in the 6 months. It was amazing sunshine, amazing temperature, and it was just like a gift from God. It was amazing. That summit for me, I did record it, and sometimes I got to be honest, I'll watch it late at night, and I'll kind of cry, watching it.
Yeah.
It was just, it was me, Vegas, and a couple other guys, and just very emotional. It's a very emotional moment for us all.
So talk us through the day then, because I know what it's like. First thing in the morning, it's still dark. You think about it the night before. You fall asleep thinking about it, and then it comes. You get up in the morning and think, now I'm going to climb the damn thing. How was it for you that day?
It was unbelievable. It didn't feel real. I felt like, now, I love the trail, don't get me wrong, but I felt like I was sentenced by a judge to walk the trail until I died. Like, you're going to walk the trail till you drop dead. So every day I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. And but eventually, in life, everything comes to an end. Oh, and that day, that night before, I couldn't believe it was coming to an end. It was like, it was unbelievable. And then to hike that mountain, as slow as I am, I flew up Katahdin, that 5.2 miles straight up. I couldn't even feel my feet. It was like so much adrenaline to get up there. And to see that sign and to know, it's kind of a sad thing because it's over. Like Vegas, and we had this trail family called Jackass 5, because you think you're never going to see each
Jackass
other again.
5?
Yeah, there was 5 of us. Yeah, we got to. But it was sad because we're not going to see each other again. Now, we did have reunion hikes and all that stuff. We have seen each other. But at the moment, it's like, that's it. And the funny thing is, what we all forget that you don't see on YouTube is the hike down from Katahdin and how terrible it was. I mean, that was, for me, when you think about the hardest parts of the trail,
definitely
going down from Katahdin was awful. I mean, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to break my face. But it's okay. I already finished the trail. You know what I mean? So I was okay with it. But I was trying not to get hurt, and you're getting cut. I was wearing shorts, so the rocks were cutting your legs, and to make it down at the end of the trail, we all met at this, I guess it was the Able Trail or something. We made it down to the end, and wow, what a feeling! Though it was amazing.
But then, and this is something I haven't heard anybody give a solution to this, really. It's the harshness of the separation, isn't it? Because everybody then goes back to their own lives. Maybe some people stay together for a couple of days and so on, but we went into Millinocket. I got picked up by somebody, and I then was taken to the airport. And the people I'd been hiking with and living with for the previous few months, they were gone. They were somewhere else, going a different direction. How did you cope with that? Because, as you say, you're so invested in that family. How did you cope with that hard separation?
Yeah. So the first month, I was fine because I came home sort of like as a folk hero, like the guy that always laying on the couch drunk, actually hiked the Appalachian Trail. So I was kind of a folk hero. But after a month, I would say it set in on me that I missed everyone, And it's a funny thing, habits carried over with me too in the civilian world. Right. Like on the trail, I was always trying to go light. Like if I had a piece of garbage in my pocket and I saw a garbage can, I was like obsessed, got to get in the garbage can. I was like that in the civilian world too. Like I noticed, like even when I rode my motorcycle, I was taking stuff out of my motorcycle, trying to make my motorcycle lighter. Like really weird, bizarre things I was doing, And
you didn't start pooping by the side of the road, did you?
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely didn't do that. Yeah, the girls wouldn't like that.
No,
so.
not good.
But like, just silly things. And I just found myself thinking about it all the time. And most unfortunately for me, it kind of brought me back to the bar where I would sit at the bar and I just think of the trail and of my friends and how much I missed it and how much I wish I go back. But, when I go back to it, it's more suffering, you know what I mean? So it's like, I love it and I don't like it in ways, you know what I mean? Because, when I went out this time, well, maybe you talk about it, but it was so cold, you know what I mean? And so it was a little bit of a hard adjustment for me, I got to say.
But you know what? It kind of should be because it's clear to me that you and Vegas and the couple of the mates you were with, this had such a massive impact upon you. Why would it? Why would it not be such a powerful thing? And why would you not be feeling that all the time? I can tell you, I think about this trail every single day, and I'm pretty sure I would, even if I didn't podcast. And I didn't. Last time I thru-hiked the Appalachian Trail was 2019. So it's a long time ago, and yet I still think about it every darn day.
I do.
Just kind of finish up a few things here. You're back there. Or you went back there. You went. When did you go? You went quite early, didn't you, this year?
Yeah, I started on January 28th. I went to Springer, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna, 'cause I was at home, kind of living a negative lifestyle again. But cognitively, I can catch that. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, you need to be disciplined again. You need Mother Appalachia to discipline you. So I went back out.
Had you put on weight, Bill? Had you put on weight?
Yeah, I did. So on 2023, I lost 42 pounds.
Wow.
When I came back to the trail 2 years later, I gained back 47 pounds.
Of course, so put it on with interest.
I was actually 5 pounds heavier when I started in 2023. So, but boy, you lose that weight quick. I can tell you that.
Oh yeah,
man. So yeah, I did go back. I came back home last week. Just like I said, my son joined the Army. He left yesterday, so I wanted to be back home to wish him off. Yeah. You
had a bit of a tough time apparently through the Smokies this year.
I did. So the storms came and the temperatures dropped really drastically. I remember one day, with the wind chill, I'm saying, it was negative 20 degrees, and it just got very, very dangerous. As long-range hikers, as you know, we're not really dressed for that. I mean, we have warm clothes, but we're not dressed like Alaskan hikers.
No.
We don't have beaver coats and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So, I'm wearing trail runners, and, I was wearing sealskin socks, though. I gave them a go this time. And they were pretty successful for me, I got to say.
Yeah. If your feet are warm, pretty much that's a good start, isn't it? Because cold feet just kill me every time.
I mean, they for me they worked to an extent, I gotta say. You know what I mean? But after being in the snow for day after day, you know what I mean? Like you said, your feet were starting to get cold, and but I gotta say the shelters in Smoky Mountain National Park, they put the tarps in front of them.
Right.
That was a tremendous
makes a huge difference.
Like a lifesaver.
Oh,
actually.
Literally a lifesaver. I quite agree with you.
Holy mackerel. But, the park rangers kind of chased us out of the park. I'm not saying they chased us out of the park, but when I came down to Newfound Gap, and the temperature was dropping rapidly, and the big weather was coming in, and I was going to sleep in the bathroom there for 2 days. I planned out.
Oh, God.
And there were actually 4 park rangers sitting there in their cars, and they said, we're going to take you off the mountain. And, they drove me down the mountain, and the hostel owners were down there shelling people, wing and hoof for me. She drove me back, and the hostel owners are amazing people, because she dropped me off at the Smoky Mountains and she knew the weather was bad. So she kept texting me, checking on me, you okay. And, I guess she called the dispatch for the park ranger, said my hikers are coming down Newfound Gap. We can get them. And they were getting us. I don't think they wanted us in the bathrooms.
So the colder part though, were you enjoying the experience? Because you weren't with the same sort of tramley and so on. And I think going in January is lunatic personally because it's too darn cold there. Were you actually having fun this time?
I got to say, I struggled a little bit on this time. I made some friends. There's not a lot of people out there. I found myself a little bit bored this time. And because of the snow and the ice, now, I didn't come prepared. Now, people will kill me on this, but, when I went to the Smokies, I didn't have microspikes. So going downhill.
What on you?
I'm always a fool, Blue. it doesn't matter. You know, I mean, I'm always full, but you know, going down those mountains without micro spikes, I was falling a lot, and I became a little bit miserable, I gotta say. You know what I mean? Getting out of the Smokies, though, was a huge celebration. You know, when I got to Standing Bear, I was like, yeah, I did it. You know what I mean? Like, but I think the damage was done a little bit for me. You know what I mean? So
you got to Tennessee. How is it out there after the storms? Is it all okay right now?
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about Helene,
the trail,
like that,
the trail, really?
Yeah, no, the trail, you know, it was fine. It really was. I mean, there's blowdowns, but there was blowdowns every year.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. But as far as the Helene storm, they did a great job clearing that. They did, and you can see where the blowdowns were, because they cut a path through it,
right.
And they have it all stacked up on the side of the trail. So, you know, for me, I didn't experience any problems. Just the typical blowdowns that we always experience.
Sure.
They did a great job. They really did a fantastic job.
And have you considered going to, I don't know, to PCT or anything like that? Or is the AT going to be your hike?
You know, the AT is my home. I feel like I know everybody on the AT. I know all the hostel owners. I know so many drivers, and we still keep in touch today. It's amazing. You know, like Donna from the Green Dragon. She texted me on Christmas and wished me a Merry Christmas. I'm thinking, well, how amazing is that? Like,
they're great.
How thoughtful these people are.
I stayed with them myself end of last year, actually. Yeah.
Now, the Appalachian Trail for me is physically bruising. I don't like it. But I love the love that it gives me. You know, I love the shuttle drivers and the hostel owners. And, you know, the Amtrak train for me runs up and down the East Coast. So if I need to get off, you know, it's just a shuttle ride to the Amtrak station. It's so convenient for me. Now, the PCT, you know, if I was in Oregon, for example, and I need to get home, oh, man, I don't know how that'd be. I do have an interest in the PCT and the CDT. I do. But the Appalachian Trail is just my home. And if I need to be put in shape, whipped back in shape, you know, it's definitely the Appalachian Trail. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, I know Vegas spoke incredibly highly of you. So and I'm glad he put me onto you, because you've got a great inspiring story. You just keep damn going. And the fact you had such a great time out there, you know, that's something you're never going to replicate in your life, and something you can hold on to for the rest of your life. It's just a wonderful feeling. And just thank you for coming on and sharing a story with us.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, buddy. Take it easy, okay?
All right. Bye-bye now.
Cheers then. Bye.
Cheers.
How lovely for Bill that his sons were bragging about him and his hike at school. You know, it's amazing how many people we seem to inspire when we head out on a long walk in the woods. People want you to succeed. And Bill felt the encouragement that pushed him on when he may otherwise have stopped. And even social media, which I think is our modern day curse, was instrumental in also pushing him forward. A lot of what I read on some of these Facebook hiking groups is bloody garbage, to be honest with you, and entirely unencouraging. But Bill found a community that wanted him to succeed, and he responded. Now, let's hear from Beth, as she is less than a week away from her first days on trail, and any last-minute decisions or fears that she may have. Here she is. So, after lots of technical difficulties, we're back on with Beth. Hey, Beth. Hey, Beth, how are you?
Hey, I'm good, Steve.
You can last hear me. And Beth, poor old Beth, she was blaming herself, blaming her phone, blaming her computer. It turns out it was me all the time. So I'm happy to accept that. So, and when we left off last week, we talked about you were going to go and see a doctor about your legs. So what's going on?
Yeah, so I rolled my ankle probably last November or something like that. Anyway, and then it was giving me problems again, and then I had used a splint or whatever. I used something on it to think that maybe it would help when I was hiking, and then it seemed worse. And so anyway, I went in to go see this doctor at Mayo in Arizona, and he was just great, and they x-rayed it, and he said, I think you just need to stretch the tendons. So that's what I've been doing, is just doing exercises, and it's fine now. So you got no excuse now to back out at the last minute. That's right. That's right.
Right. So this week is about any of those last minute thoughts and even changes you may have made, as well as the things you're looking forward to, and perhaps a few things that you're really not looking forward to. So what's the plan? When are you actually heading out? Have you got a final date yet?
So I will start driving here on Wednesday, and then I pick up Andrew on the 29th in Atlanta. He flies in late that night.
That's Wednesday the 26th. So is it a 3-day journey?
Well, I'm taking 3 days. I'm going to go down to Kansas and drop off some stuff and whatever. So it's probably more like 2 days, but it's 2 full days.
Right.
I mean, it's probably 26 hours or something driving.
That's a lot,
so
isn't
it's
it?
a long way. It's a long way.
Yeah.
So I'll pick him up on the 29th, and then we'll go to the visitor center on the 30th, and we got some friends meeting us. And then I think we'll start on the 31st from Springer.
Right. So what that is next Monday, in fact, you'll be starting.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So we'll get the chance to hear your first report from the trail a day or so into it. So that's cool. So are you actually packed yet?
I am. I've packed and repacked, and I've packed and I've repacked, and I've packed and I've repacked.
So what is have you tried using weighing it with and without water and food, or
yeah.
what's the weight?
So right now it's about 17 and a half, probably without water or food.
Not bad, is it?
I wish it were a little bit less, but I don't want to be cold, and so I know I'm overpacking probably warm clothes, but yeah.
Now you've always said that Andrew is not a planner. So do you know whether he's packed yet? Has he got a pack
it's
yet?
kind of funny because I came back from Arizona and then I picked up his pack. So I have his pack. So he is not packed because he just has a few things in there and that's about it. So so we'll figure that out when when he flies in, and I'm sure he's bringing some other stuff, but yeah, I think all he has in there is a sleeping bag and what else? Ursack, a cup, like a shirt, 2 pair of pants.
It's not going to be enough, It's not going to be enough,
I know. So he's bringing the rest of his stuff, and yeah, we'll figure it out.
So you've now packed and unpacked and repacked and so on. Did you make any last minute decisions on what's in the pack and any changes at all?
So I thought I was going to bring an Enlightened Equipment sleeping bag because it weighed a little bit less than my Feathered Friends one, even though that's originally what I thought I was going to bring. And then I took it out and I looked at it and I thought, oh yeah, it's not as warm. So I put back the Feathered Friends one in there and got it in a compression bag so that I can fit it in my pack. And so it's a little bit more weight than the other one, but I don't want to be cold. And I had a great email from Betty, our friend Betty.
Yeah, of course.
And I talked to her last night and she made me feel so comfortable. She's like, you know what? You don't want to be cold. Make sure you bring, clothes and you can always get rid of them. And so she was wonderful.
She is wonderful. She wrote to me recently about my accident as well. She's so nice. But I feel we should not spare her blushes. I'd like you to tell us, Beth. Beth, rather. Tell us. Do you remember? Betty was funny, really heavy. Her pack was really heavy, wasn't it? Tell everybody why it was heavy.
It was so funny. We were going to do the Virginia Triple Crown, and the night before, she said, my pack is really heavy, and I don't know why. And she's done, 1,000 miles on the AT or whatever. Yeah. And so we were trying to help her go through all the pack and find out why it was so heavy, and took everything out of the pack and whatever, went through all of it. And the next day, we get to the first shelter and we're unpacking our stuff. She has a 5-pound weight in the outside pocket of her pack, which she was using for training. And so it was the most hilarious thing because it's like, no wonder it was so heavy. I mean, 5 pounds of it was that stupid weight. And she put it on the picnic table and left it there. And I'm sure the people that came the next day thought, what in the heck is this 5-pound weight
How
doing?
on earth did this get here? Yeah. that was absolutely amazing. Now, go back to your pack, though. Did the chair make it?
Nope, not yet.
Don't leave it behind. You said you want to be comfortable. You know what it's like. Do not leave it behind. I promise you'll regret it if you don't take it.
So I'm going to have it in my sister's van. So I'll have 2 weeks to decide whether I want it or not. Or it'll be in my pickup. And Jen can always send it to me. So I think I'm going to start without it. And then when I get desperate and I know you're right, then I will pack it.
So I'm looking forward to that recording when you tell me you've caved to the chair.
I caved to the chair because it is. I remember when we were on the Mount Whitney trip, and I remember about 4 people or 3 people who had packed chairs. If they got up from their chair, somebody was in that chair
Absolutely.
right away because yes.
So now it's upon you, and you really are. Really the last few days now, as you said. What's your prevailing emotion? Are you nervous? Have you had enough of the wait? You can't wait for it to come. What are you thinking?
All of it. I'm excited. I was nervous, and then it was so nice to talk to Betty yesterday, and she just, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine, because it's so big. You can't think of it as 2,200 miles. I think you just got to say. Sure. Okay, we're going to start out and we're going to just do what we can do, and try to take it easy at first. I think we're both focused on that, so I hope that we really do that.
And Andrew, you said Andrew's a stronger hiker than you, which I find hard to believe because you're a very strong hiker. I've hiked with you, and you fly up that mountain. So, what are you expecting to do in those early days? Because he's going to want to do more, isn't he?
He might, but he is the one who said too, we got to start slow. So I think we'll be good. I think, he can always go ahead if he wants, and then I can catch up. But he's very strong. Just in general, he's strong, and he's
his idea of slow, Beth, might be 20 miles a day, and that ain't slow to start with. So be careful with that. Be careful with that.
I think I really do think that we will really start slow. And we when we did the 2 weeks on before, we didn't go crazy. Any of the days we maybe our longest day was maybe 13, 14 miles. Right. Otherwise, we really did take it easy. I looked back at where we stopped for, at different points, and we were smart,
So remind us again, which parts of the AT did you do in those 2 weeks?
We started we started at the lodge, at Amicalola Lodge.
All right.
And then went up as far as, we probably made it about 130 miles into the,
that'd be nice.
Into the trail.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
So
you've already gone over Albert Mountain then, which was that very short. It's the 100-mile mark exactly. There's a fire tower on top.
Oh yeah,
It looks like a mere blip on the map, but it's just vertical.
Shoot. Yeah, I quit watching the videos of different people where they're going because I just get like a little freaked out. But
good move. So, have you looked ahead on the map and thought about places that you're really looking forward to in particular? Or I know you're embracing the whole thing, but are there things you think I really want to see that?
Oh, I don't know. Katahdin.
Yeah, that's a ways away yet. Don't get over your skis, girl.
There's not really any place that I am so, except, it'll be fun to do the Virginia Triple Crown going the other way. Exactly. That'll be really fun.
Now, remember we went southbound, didn't we, on Virginia Triple Crown? And we went uphill to the Dragon's Tooth, didn't we?
Yes.
You imagine doing that downhill. That is pretty sharp. So you don't want to do that on a rainy day. And now, by the way, Beth, you now know how to climb up there, don't you? Because you came up with me, didn't you?
That's right.
That's right. So I'm sure you can do that bit again as well. And are there a number of things that you think you're not really looking forward to, or are you just literally going to embrace it all? Because some of it sucks, and you've got to be prepared for it to suck, and that's part of it.
Well, Andrew was talking about trying to get up to Klingman's Dome and how much vertical. How uphill it is to get there. And I thought, why did you tell me that? I don't want to know that.
It's not that bad. Funny enough, I'm speaking to Dave later on this afternoon from Klingman's Dome. He's going to be at Klingman's Dome this afternoon. If he can get a signal anyway, that is. Yeah. Klingman's Dome. You're going along a ridge and then you go down and you go up again. It's quite a sharp up towards the end, but it's not that bad. You do you've done by the time you get to Klingman's Dome, you would have done a whole lot worse than that already.
Okay.
So don't worry about it.
Now I'm not worried about that anymore.
There you go. You just have to speak to Steve. He'll sort it all out. So, ready to go. I will look forward to, be careful on the drive for a start, obviously. Make sure you get there. You don't you stop it and, get any problems with the drive. And I wish you and Andrew all the best. And I will speak to you probably next, I think, Tuesday or Wednesday morning if you can, so we can have a chat and see how it's gone. All right?
That sounds great.
All right then, Beth. Good talk to you.
Thanks.
See you then. Bye.
Bye.
This is such an exciting time as you start to realise that the thing you've been dreaming of and working towards is about to really happen. I've hiked with Beth and she's a strong hiker, so I'm pretty confident that she has what it takes to get this done. We're going to be cheering her on and Dave over the next 5 or 6 months. Before we hear from Dave, I need to thank donors from the past 2 weeks, as I straight up forgot to do it last week. Our wonderful recurring donors have been Todd Withrow, Galloway Johnson, Suzanne Johnson, Betty McInerney, Michael Garsh, Sharon James, Sean Deadwiley, Ann Pickin, Emmanuel Bravo-Ramos, Kevin Weidman, Brian Alsop, Emily's Escapades, Glenn Ferguson, Bruce Brinker, Jessica Diaz, Hugh Icareth and Kendall Poliquet. Thanks to you all for stepping up once more. I truly appreciate it. Now, how about Dave? We tried to record on Tuesday, but he got cut off halfway through, so I thought we may miss him this week. He texted me at 4 p.m. on Wednesday afternoon and asked if it was too late to record. Now, the correct answer should have been, yes, it's too late. But somehow, somebody on my end of the phone replied, sure. So here he is.
Good afternoon, Steve.
Hey, Dave, how are you?
All right. Can you hear me okay today?
I can. So let's get straight to it.
Okay. Make sure we don't. Well, I'm static and done. We're at the shelter.
Okay, great. Which shelter are you at?
Well, let me. Cosby Knob. So it's 230.4 north. Yep. Beautiful spot. Yep.
You're moving forward a bit. I've got to tell you, you're moving quite fast at the moment, aren't you?
Well, I don't know. I have some an app that totals the miles. Average so far is only about 11, but that includes 2 0 days. So we'll see. I mean, I'm moving fast enough, but at some point, anyway, yeah, we're doing good. Smoky's been good, but tough, but good. Man, the blowdowns in the last day or so, though. Ever since we left Klingman's Dome, it's been a jungle gym.
Well, let's come to that in a minute, because Klingman's Dome is obviously quite an important sort of part of the hike and so on. So, was that? What do you think of it? Because it's not attractive, is it?
No, it's ugly. And like I kind of tried to say yesterday, it's this weird spaceship in the middle of nowhere. If it wasn't for the asphalt road leading to it, it would be so out of place you'd wonder what the hell. Even the asphalt road doesn't set you up for that. But at least it gives you some indication that man was here. Otherwise, you think Martians had been there. Yeah. So,
what's your overall impression of the Smokies so far? Then,
I'll tell you, I've loved the Smokies because it finally changed my view of the trail. Everything up to the Smokies was kind of the same. Like I mentioned, stark, a lot of dead leaf, on the ground, of brown, so even brown and colorless. So when we finally came up into the Smokies and you started getting a little bit more evergreen stuff like that. And then the forest was covered with moss and lichen, right? The dead logs, everything covered in it. It's been beautiful. I will confess, so after 5 days, it's time for a change.
Yeah. Well, you get changes all along in this hike, so wouldn't worry too much about that. You got plenty of miles to get more changed. Let's face it, you're mile 200 and what, 61?
251.
251. So you're about 11% through.
No, I'm sorry. 231. Anyway,
you're still only been just about 10.5% through. So you got plenty of change to come. Yeah. So
no doubt.
So did you actually enjoy the Smokies? Because they're quite tough, aren't they?
I've loved the Smokies. They've been tough. I swear, people like, oh well, you get up to Molly's Ridge Shelter and it's just a ridge walk. It's like, who's made up that bullshit?
That's not true at all, is it? That's not true.
It's not true at all. And every day today was the easiest day. We did 13 miles and about 3,000 feet of elevation gain. So I'd call it the easy. Now tomorrow will be the easiest day because I'm going to drop out 8 miles to Davenport Gap. And then we're going to stay at a hostel. So it's about 8 miles tomorrow. I mean, it's a lot of it's like going to the knock. We're going to drop 3,500 feet, but it's only 900 up. So
yeah, it's quite a long way down. And where are you going to go to then?
We're not going to go to Standing Bear. Way too much negative chatter around Standing Bear.
Oh, really? I'm surprised.
Everybody's like, this place is the dump, and they'll just squeeze 27 people in the space of 14. I don't know, but we're going to a place called the Discerning Hiker. Or, I don't know, something like that.
I tell the guy who owns a Discerning Hiker, I know I still owe him a phone call because I said I would interview him about his hostage. You tell me what it's like, and I'll interview him at some stage.
Perfect. That'll be perfect.
So you went over as you say, the infamous Jacob's Ladder. How was that? It's quite tough, isn't it?
Yeah, and the funny part about that is that I didn't know it was coming. I didn't know what it was. We had been running a long day that day. We did 16 miles. I think I mentioned that was 16 miles and 6,000 feet. We came out of the knock and went to the Brown Fork shelter. So we did Fontana in 2 days. And so we hit Stokoa Gap, and one of our group has a friend who brought pizza out. So we spent like an hour sitting around having, 3 big pizzas. We just sat and chowed. And we're like, okay, great. And we only got 4 miles to go or 5, whatever it was. And then it was all of that. It's like, what the hell is this? And who sucked this at the end of my day, right? I didn't know what it was, but you just got that point, like you say, where you're just kind of going straight up and over and going, who stuck this in the way?
Well, in the message you sent me, you said, and I'm not surprised really, it was a tough day, 16 miles and 6,000 foot of elevation, and it triggered some issues with your Achilles. So how has that been?
It's improved quite a bit. I mean, I think it wasn't the full on trigger. I started noticing a little bit of, you kind of notice this here, this there, what's bugging me today, But we went up and over that. Then the next day, I've been having to work kind of was sore, and the next day I'd be fine. But the next day I started in the morning, it was sore all day. And actually it was my first moment on the entire time so far of, I don't know, anxiety over, letting injuries lead, ultimately what's going to happen. It's not an injury per se, but that was I was with the group, and we decided I said, I'm going to break the group off. You guys go ahead, because we're about to enter the Smokies. We're at Fontana. And I said, I'm not going to do it. I need a day off. I needed it anyway. It'd been 13 days. And so I just said, look, I need the day off. And they all like, you know what, we do too. And we all went back to this hostel we stayed in near the Knock called Rambling Roots. Absolutely fantastic. New-ish, thru-hiker from 2017, I think it was. Somebody you should interview. She's fantastic. Her name is Bookie. Just a lovely woman. Lives and works there alone. It's her place.
So where is that then, Dave? Where is that? Is that near the Knock?
Yeah, it's just up the street, the main street that runs right into the Knock. You drive up a mile. There's another place called the Hike Inn, or a few more places right in between. She literally bought the place with the intent of making it a hostel, and it really is nice. Not nice. It's nice. I'm not trying to describe it as a luxury location. I just mean that it's super welcoming. The main floor, it's basically the whole place is the hostel. She's got a little bit of room upstairs for her own private room, but otherwise the main floor it's kind of one giant great room, kitchen, living room with tall ceilings, like almost like an old barn space, and then downstairs, kind of semi basement but open on one downslope, is all bunks and bunk rooms, 2 private rooms, small, but she does laundry for you. It's one of those, she does the laundry for you, and it's like what, $40-$50 a day. I mean, it's really nice.
And how's your not that I know what your budget is, but is your budget? Are you spending more than you thought you spend? Because I always found that when I went into town, it was you just hemorrhage money.
I probably I'm keeping about a monthly view, so I haven't looked at it. I'm using one specific credit card for pretty much every trail expense. So at the end of the month, it's going to be maybe $1,200-$1,300 this month, but I had to buy a new sleeping pad. So far so good, but mostly because we've had 5 days out, 6 in the Smokies, and I got like $70 worth of food. So it's been a pretty cheap couple of days, that's for sure.
Newfound Gap, did you go into Gatlinburg at all?
No. So that was no. When we resupplied at the Knock, actually she took us to a grocery store. We said, okay, I'm going to do 5 nights, 6 days. So I resupplied for the whole trip through. And we could have bailed at Gatlinburg. But I just decided not to go for the redneck Disneyland. I have a feeling Jeannie and I are going to come back here at some point. We're going to do a kind of a drive trip, and so I want to see. I'll see some of these places, from the road. I didn't finish my Achilles thing, so after the day off, I started back up. We started into the Smokies to Molly's Ridge, and that was a tough day, but I've always been aware of I'm not joking about hiking with your hips and your upper part of your legs more than your knees and your ankles.
Yep.
Mostly as for knee protection, and then some stuff I saw some physical therapists online, both downhill and uphill, kind of driving with your hips. So I've just been more aware of that and keeping a little less flexing of the right calf. So instead of driving uphill basically off your toes, right, and kind of picking yourself up with your with your lower leg, I'm driving more with my hips, and I feel pretty good. I mean, there's little twinges here and there, but it's become part of the pattern of twinge here, this thing, twinge of that thing, the knee, the hip, they're just part of the movement.
And I know you've been hiking with three. We would call them youngsters, but they're adults. But three people. Have they moved on, or are you still with them now or not?
They have two of them have moved on because they needed and wanted to keep a greater pace than I was going to do. So we all went into the Smokies together and hit Molly's Ridge shelter the first night, and then the next night they wanted to do 17 or 18 the next day, and the other two of us said no, we're not going to do that, and so they wanted to finish in 5 days, 4 nights, 5 days, and I'm like, no, that's 15 a day roughly for the Smokies, and I just didn't want to push that.
Yeah. So you're 200 miles, 215, 230 miles in rather. So what's your overall impression so far? Is this how you had imagined it would be?
More or less. I mean, I think it's 100% of what I imagined it would be, and almost nothing what my mind's eye had seen. You know what I mean?
Yes.
The images you create for yourself. I mean, you see so many YouTube videos and read stories, and you create visual images, and it's maybe not 180 degrees opposed to what I imagined, but it's definitely different. I don't mean that in a negative way. Different is just different. You can paint all the pretty pictures you want, and life out here just doesn't quite look the same. It may be prettier. I mean, we've seen views that you couldn't believe. So, have you done the what's it called, the sleeping away from a shelter yet? Or no, you've been with other people, so it doesn't really matter. So have you because generally people camp at shelters, don't they? And normally some camping spots. Have you done that every night? Yeah. In fact, when the Smokies were inside the shelters every night per the regulations, there haven't been. Sure. There have been people tenting around the shelters in the Smokies, mostly by choice, but in a couple nights where we were 14 in a shelter that holds 12, for example.
Yes.
I prefer being in the tent. I don't mind being in the shelter. It's fine. I like the shelter because it's less setup hassle, and you're guaranteed, and I use the term loosely, a relatively flat, level space. Even the shelter floors aren't as level as you'd like. You feel like you're rolling over onto the people next to you. But no, I've been tenting a number of nights as well. I have not been tenting. I have been tenting where there've been shelters where tenting was okay. Right, it's all of Georgia. I haven't stayed at a shelter until we got to the Smokies. I'll probably go back to tenting once we're out of the Smokies, but in the meantime, it's been all right.
So you mentioned in the very beginning there's quite a few blowdowns. Are they blowdowns from recently, or are they from Helene? Are you getting further north now where Helene was hitting more and more?
No, we have. I don't think we've hit too much of the Helene mess yet. This is all fairly recent. There's been a couple of big storms. There was one about a week or so ago that blew through. Right. You're seeing a lot of stuff that looks fresh, and what's surprising me, it's a mix of both trees that have fallen over, root ball and all, and trees that are just literally snapped in half. It's an amazing sight to see. It feels like every tree that's fallen down in the Smokies is right across the middle of the trail.
Wow.
I mean, and it's true and it's not true. I mean, it's up to about Clingman's Dome, it was fine. A few here and there, but since Clingman's Dome, it's been fairly messy.
Has the weather warmed up yet?
We've been fortunate with the weather, I'd say. Warm is, if you're in Florida, it's freezing cold here. If you're in Montana, it's a beautiful sunny day. It's somewhere in between, right? But we've had more blue skies and clouds than not. I'd say it's in the upper 40s right now, to the low 30s overnight. But yesterday, woke up, it was a really dense, freezing fog.
Wow.
But by the time we got to Clingman Zone yesterday, it had cleared up enough that you could see. So we got lucky, And then this morning, it was just an interesting observation coming out along a ridgeline this morning, because it was still kind of foggy and misty when we left. And as we climbed up to a ridgeline, there was a heavy cold wind hitting it. The trees were covered in frozen fog, basically. They were all white.
Yeah.
They looked like they'd been flocked like a Christmas tree, right?
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah, that's great.
It was a beautiful sight.
Well, look, I'm glad we were able to catch up, because we tried to record yesterday, and I've now it's quite late for me to be doing my editing, so I haven't finished the rest of my editing yet, so I've got to get this done. But look, I'm glad we called up. If you can, send me a picture, and otherwise, if you can't, that's fine. But if you can send me a picture, great.
I'll send you
okay, mate. Well, in that case, I will speak to you next week and just keep going. You're going to be doing Max Patch soon, so look forward to that.
Ooh, very good. Heads up, we'll be at Hostel. We'll be in Hot Springs like Sunday or Monday. I'm going to zero on Sunday or Monday, so we should be able to. I'll pick you up on that day.
Okay, mate. Good talk to you. All right, take it easy.
All right, Steve. Thank you.
Cheers, then. Bye.
Bye.
230 miles in, or about 10% of the way there. He's doing well and sensibly taking rests when he needs them. And of course, trail families join up, then disband all the way along the trail. Well, it's great to be hiking with people. You really need to hike your own hike. It's a cliche, but it does have the added advantage of being very true as well. I'd hate to see Dave aggravate an injury by pushing further than his body wants to go. He seems a level-headed bloke, so I'm pretty sure he'll be managing his hike such that he can put in the miles without overexerting himself. Now, for the last time, we've come to the end of Emily Lender's book, Happy Hiking. I've got to say, some of this woman's perspective on hiking has made me realise how different hiking as a woman is as contrasted from hiking as a man. I'd never understood that, and for that I'm grateful to Emily for allowing me to make this the last book I read on the show. Thanks, Emily. I'll see you next week. Morning came and we were on our lively, sparky selves again, ready to tackle another day on the trail. It was an easy, short 10 miles from the campsite to the next campsite at the base of Katahdin in Baxter State Park. We enjoyed our day packs again as Batman took our gear and met us on the other side one last time. The hike was like being in a fairy tale where everything is perfect and pain-free. It was the sweetest hike. We followed the river for a while and another stream whose name I cannot pronounce, Nezowodnahunk. Then more streams. We passed Big and Little Niagara Falls and Dacey Pond and eventually ended at Katahdin Stream campground. The hike was so easy, even with frequent stops to enjoy the trail, we had a full afternoon to rest up before our big summit day. Most hikers stay at the Birches Lean-To, reserved for through hikers for a nominal $10 fee. But we had reservations for 2 private lean-tos at Abel Campground, 2 miles east of the trail. We didn't want to rely on space at the Birches, and it is only for through hikers, so Batman wouldn't have been able to stay with us. We also had more guests. My friend Justin and my nephew and godson Sean were joining us. Bruce picked us up at the trailhead and drove us back to the campsite. The girls grabbed one of the lean-tos with their friend Penguin, who we met up with. Batman and I set up our tent, saving the other lean-to for Justin and Sean. I set right to work building a fire. Shortly after, the park ranger visited us to let us know we could not tent at the lean-tos. Thankfully, there was an empty lean-to next door, so the girls rented that one and Batman and I moved our tent into the lean-to. Justin and Sean showed up close to sunset with Subway sandwiches and margaritas. It was going to be a great night. Alcohol is not allowed in the park, so we kept it very low-key and respectful. Sean took a seat next to me at the picnic table, and I told him I had a story to tell about his aunt once Justin joined us. A few minutes later, Justin sat down, and I proceeded to tell them about our skinny dipping excursion with the plane and the hiker. I spared no details. When I finished, Sean laughed and he confessed he already knew. "How is that possible?" I asked. He proceeded to tell us that he and Justin had stopped at a store in Millinocket for a few last-minute items, and they spoke with a hiker who told them about hiking upon 3 naked women, and one of them was named Black Bear. I guess it isn't true that what happens on the trail stays on the trail. A bottle of tequila and 2 bundles of firewood later, we all retired to our spots for one last night on the trail. We were up before sunrise and signing the trail log just as the sun started to break the darkness. The girls cruised ahead, and I didn't see them again until later that evening to deliver their gear. I was a little sad at first that we'd been through so much together but didn't summit together, but that was okay too. Things work out for a reason, and the day couldn't have been more perfect. Justin, Sean, Batman and I made our way slowly to the top. Batman and I could have easily pushed forward and kept pace with Penguin, Moxie and Maps, but Sean and Justin did not have hiker legs hardened by almost 2,200 miles. We took frequent stops and relished the relationship we were building as they joined me on this climax of my trip. Justin likes to do an annual hike of Katahdin, but Sean had never summited her, even though he had attempted a few times in the past. We also had another job to do while hiking. We were honoured to be carrying 2 important articles. When I first thought about doing the hike, I wanted to do it for a cause. I was so bogged down with the information overload of planning that I didn't have the brain power to also think about a cause outside of myself. When I met Andrew, he had heard about a program where you can carry a rock in memory of a fallen military hero. But that didn't pan out either, so I invited a couple of schools I was affiliated with to follow me. At least that gave me a sense of helping in a different way. But on this day, it all came full circle. The night before, as we sat around the fire, Justin had showed us a surprise. He had 2 stones of 2 fallen heroes from the Summit Project. The Summit Project is a living memorial for fallen Maine heroes who have died in the line of duty since September 11th, 2001. It was the same program Andrew had told me about. The stones were for Brett Emery and Joel House. They were young men from our area who had been killed overseas. I couldn't say a word. All I could do was cry. Justin hadn't known my desire to do something like this, and here he was, presenting us with the memory stones to be a part of my final summit. It was more than I could handle. Once again, the trail provides. Our job was to ensure these Maine heroes are not forgotten by carrying their memorial stones to the summit and talking about their lives to other hikers we met along the way. Justin carried one, and Sean and I shared the responsibility for the other. The particular stone we had was a little heavy. Just when I could feel its weight starting to be a burden, I quickly remembered the struggles the young man and his family went through giving his life for others' freedom. The weight I carried became trivial. Our hike was shrouded in clouds all day. Visibility was at best 10 feet. The downside was that we were working so hard climbing the mile-high mountain without the reward of a view. The upside was that we concentrated on each other. We didn't have to fuss over getting that perfect panorama because there was nothing to see. Our focus was on helping one another navigate the rungs and scrambles. We rested on each other as needed and told stories about the memorial stones. This wasn't my first time up the mountain, so I knew when we were getting close to the top. I could feel my excitement growing. A hiker descending asked if I was Black Bear. I affirmed I was, and he then said, "There's a welcoming party just up ahead for you." I started to hyperventilate. I knew who it was. My niece Stephanie, who joined me for the presidential traverse, was meeting me at the top with 2 of her children, Brady and Kyla. The previous summer, we had all hiked the mountain together. We were going to descend by way of the knife edge, but my fear of heights had caused me to chicken out. We had to backtrack and go down the same way we'd come up. Little Brady said to me, "Don't worry, Auntie Em, I'm young, I can do it another day." Words from the mouth of babes. They had driven from southern Maine, arriving late into Millinocket the night before and spending the night in a hotel, only to get up early to reach the summit before me. The cloud cover was so thick we still could only see a few feet in front of us, but it wasn't thick enough to muffle the sounds of Brady and Kyla calling to me from the mountaintop. "Auntie Em! Auntie Em! You're almost there!" It sounded like angels guiding me home. I couldn't see them, but I could hear them plain as day. Then there they were. Excitement got the best of them, and they ran down the trail to meet me. My little niece and nephew appeared from the smoky fog like a dream in a fantasy movie. They threw their arms around me and hugged me tight. I was almost there, just a few more yards, but I didn't want to move. Excitement as well as sadness took control. I had all I could do to keep from melting into the rocks that made up the mountain. I was so moved by the sincere joy those 2 kids had for me. Joy and sadness were ripping me apart from all directions. But it was all about to end. My brain knew it. My heart knew it. But my soul had not yet accepted it. On the trail, I was Black Bear, a fictional character I chose before the hike, who became real over 6 months of hiking. Once my ears heard the cry of "Auntie Em," my soul flipped. I hadn't heard my real name much in the last 6 months. I didn't want to go back to being her. Yes, I still wanted to be a wife, a mum, a friend, an aunt, but I had also become so much more, and I didn't want to lose that. By now I could hear Stephanie and the rest of my entourage. I finished my hug session with Brady and Kyla, and we headed to the finish line. Several steps later, there it was. First I saw the sign, then Batman, smiling with the camera in position, just like all the other times he had met me. I just walked 2,189.2 miles to reach that sign, white blazes guiding me north with each agonising step my feet could endure, Katahdin pulling me toward her like a giant magnet. The goal was the summit, to accomplish something great, to kiss that sign. But it wasn't the sign I went to. It was Batman. It was Bruce. It was my husband, the man I fell in love with all over again, the real hero of this journey who I went to first. Nothing else mattered. We descended the mountain and said goodbye to our friends and family, then drove to Millinocket to deliver Maps and Moxie their gear. Just like that, it was over. After 2 years of planning, 6 months of hiking, and countless memories made, Batman and I headed home. An hour later, at 9 p.m, we arrived at my dad's house, where he and my brother were waiting for us. Dad had made his famous shrimp salad, hamburgers and hot dogs. He made extra for leftovers, but little did he know how his little girl's appetite had changed. I let round one settle, then, after sharing a few stories, I went back and cleaned up whatever food remained. Batman and I left Dad's and drove the short 3 miles to our house. It was late, and we were exhausted mentally and physically. It was the first time I had ever been away from home for so long. The boys were away at college, and the place seemed so huge, empty, and unfamiliar, yet comforting at the same time. It was a strange feeling I could not explain, but I was finally home. I enjoyed my adventure, but I was never, ever going to do any long-distance backpacking again. We left the unpacking for the next day and went right to bed. I didn't even shower. I knew I could do that as long as I wanted, as often as I wanted the next day. Sleep was needed. Uninterrupted, worry-free, alarm-free sleep was all I wanted to do. It came fast. I fell into a deep sleep, the best sleep yet, but soon after drifting away, I woke up in a panic. "Oh my gosh," I screamed. "Bruce, there's an animal on my leg. I can feel its fur on the back of my ankle. I don't dare move. What do I do?" I was so alarmed. It was the most frightened I'd been on my entire thru-hike. I was in deep, peaceful sleep, but abruptly awakened by something furry rubbing back and forth against my exposed ankle. Thoughts raced through my sleepy, terrified brain. I tried discerning the danger I was in. Was it some carnivorous creature of the night looking for a midnight snack, or worse? I was frozen in fear. What if it was a skunk and we'd be sprayed? Okay, maybe being sprayed by Pepe Le Pew isn't as threatening as having my leg gnawed off, but when you're terrified and you have no clue where you are, your reasoning skills are non-existent. My mind raced with horrendous scenarios playing out in a split second. Bruce sensed my terror and calmly said, "Em, it's okay. You're at home, in your bed, and it's the cat." I was completely disoriented and I had no clue where I was. It took me a few seconds to process this new information. After I was sure what was fact and what was fiction and that the danger had passed, I burst out laughing. It was my first night home from my adventure. My mind had adjusting to do. I was home for 2.5 weeks and settling into home life was much harder than I first thought it would be. The first days, I have to admit, were quite stressful and full of anxiety as I readjusted to life off the trail. Adapting to trail life at the start, something I'd never experienced before, was a breeze and easier than I'd expected. It was actually quite enjoyable. I slipped right into the routine of walking all day. My only concerns were food, water, shelter, and safety from the elements. It was routine and very peaceful. It was hard to believe now it was all over. Now that I was home, everyone expected me to carry on like before, but I couldn't. I'd changed, evolved. I was still Emily, but with a huge dose of black bear. I'd learned to live simply, love more deeply, appreciate everything and other things. I went back to work right away and fell into the old routine of my domestic chores as well. There was so much to do, so many commitments, and not any time to just be. Black Bear was slowly going into hibernation. I never have been one to like crowded or small spaces, noise or other overstimulating situations, except for outdoor sporting events. Now I started having more frequent panic attacks. Routine trips to the big city of Bangor, population of 35,000, would have me riding in the car with my hands over my eyes. Walking into Walmart, Bruce would have to hold my hand and keep me calm as the masses zoomed by me with their carts and screaming kids. Is it any wonder that a year later, when Sharon asked if I wanted to hike the Appalachian Trail again, I said yes. Epilogue. The trail giveth and the trail taketh away. Even before I stepped 1 foot on the Appalachian Trail, I had heard the old adage, the trail giveth and the trail taketh away. Being slightly educated, which is a dangerous place to be, specialising in nothing and knowing just enough to get into trouble, I thought I knew what that meant. My definition was, you give some and you get some. Simple enough. In reality, I had no clue until I became a part of the Appalachian Trail cult. Yikes, what's she talking about? Cult. I know the term cult dredges up images of religious fanatics and mass suicide, but don't worry, that isn't how I use it here. According to the Merriam-Webster dictionary app on my phone, a kinder and gentler description of the word is a usually small group of people characterised by such devotion. Like all things one devotes to, there is give and take, and so it is with hiking the Appalachian Trail. Throughout Happy Hiking, I wrote about finding things on the trail, from items needed to friendships to spiritual gifts. From almost the moment I started planning my hike, I was a recipient of serendipitous items. When I was done writing and rewriting my story as much as I could without professional help, I sent it away to my editor so she could work her magic. The next day I started picking up my notes, drafts and miscellaneous materials for Happy Hiking that I had scattered on my writing desk for over 4 years. As I was doing so, a blog post dated April the 2nd, 2015, fell from a stack of papers as I moved them. At the top of the print, written in my scribbling with very large letters, was, "Put this in the book way later." This is what my blog post said for that day. The trail giveth and the trail taketh away. April the 2nd, 2015. The first thing the trail took from me was my bright orange Humane black bear hat. I lost it the second day on the trail. It was going to be my signature hat. I've been a recipient of serendipitous items from the trail several times. The main thing I continue to be given from the trail is change. I find it everywhere. I think I'm the only hiker who actually carries change. I collect it and drop it in the next tip or donation jar I come to when I enter a town. My really nice find was a square foam seat that Gilligan found and gave to me. It was just lying in the middle of the trail. I like to take loads of breaks, and that makes it nice to sit on and is light. Several smaller things, like a twist tie to hold my cords so they don't become tangled in my bag. One morning when packing up, I said to myself I needed to get twist ties next stop in town. That night, when I set up my tent, there was a large one on the ground. The trail giveth? I know it's really God who giveth. The largest item the trail took from me happened about 4 days ago. The trail did not provide for my hiking buddy, Andrew, so he decided to go home. I cried for 2 whole miles. Then I was sad the whole day. I get so emotionally attached to people I care about. He and his wife have a special place in my heart. I know I will see them when I get home, but the first day on the trail without him was so hard and lonely. I wish him well. That post was written very early in the hike. Those were not the only examples of the trail's give and take. Goodness and sadness continued to follow me north. When I discovered my omission, I dropped what I was doing, sat down and read the sheet of paper I'd printed from the internet and had written the note on so as not to forget it, which I did forget. As I was reading it, my mind went in a totally different direction. I'd written the post with less than a month of trail experience under my boots. When I reread it, I was a full-fledged AT cult member with a different set of processing tools. The second paragraph mentions continuing to be given change. I did not read that as money, but rather as the verb, change. I said to myself, that is so true even today when I'm back in the real world. The trail changed me and continues to do so, even though I'm miles away from it. It wasn't until I continued reading that I realised back then I was talking about money. But my brain wouldn't let go of the thought about the trail providing change in me. Most of the time when a hiker says the trail will provide, they're referring to unexpectedly receiving something at a time when they most needed it, usually in the form of food, water, a ride, or some other physical item or service. But the intangible is seldom mentioned, and that realisation didn't dawn on me until I reread the post that slipped from my pile. Change is a huge aspect in a hiker's experience when they embark on the journey from Georgia to Maine, Maine to Georgia, or any other direction they choose to hike. Thru-hikers are not the same when they finish mile 2,189.2 as they were at the start of mile 0. Something happens to them in between. Yes, they lose weight, they grow hair, they get fit, they make new friends. Those things are obvious. What isn't obvious is the change that takes place in the hearts and minds of those unsuspecting 25% each year who actually complete a trek of the Appalachian Trail. That change is different for everyone. We all start with different stuff and we all end with different stuff. A friend of mine, Eric Lorraine, a thru-hiker in the class of 2014, called that stuff the beast. He blew his knee out hiking through the lemon squeezer in New York. He was not about to quit, but the pain was ruining his enjoyment of the hike. He wanted to be present and enjoy the hike, but he couldn't get past the agony in his knee. He had to learn to deal with it, to figure out how to hike and live in the now. His pain and all the other stuff, the beast, he worried about, were stealing the joy in his journey. One day, as he was hiking, he discovered his knee had stopped hurting as much and that it coincided with having a smile inside his heart. He was choosing to focus on the nice things around him, the now, the smile. He discovered the more he stayed in the now, his knees didn't hurt, his leg didn't hurt, and other worries didn't occupy his mind. It was because of the smile. For Eric, the trail giveth to him a strong heart and a strong will to see what was right in front of him, and the trail tooketh away his beast. For me, the trail did that also, and so much more. I had a multitude of beasts I didn't even know lived in my being. But the trail stripped me down to my most vulnerable state and clothed me in a new way for which I will be forever grateful. Today, 5 years later, I'm still learning how I've changed. Sometimes it's obvious, and other times it's subtle. As I hiked north, I morphed into a better person. It wasn't like I was a bad one to begin with, but there's always room for improvement. What does better actually mean? My better will be different than your better. For me, I guess the biggest change for the better in me was the trail tooketh away my pride. I didn't even know I had it. I tend to be a very high D personality. Everything had to be my way or take the highway. And it was important that everyone know I'm right and I never ever showed weakness. I loved to win and usually did not have fun if I came in second. That was pre-hike. Post-hike, I couldn't care less what people think about me. Right, wrong, indifferent. As far as never showing weakness in public, well, I don't care about that either. I still like to win. I'm working on that. But the gist of it is the trail changed my attitude and gave me a sense of freedom. With each mile I hiked, certain stuff, the beast, became less important to me. Once I stopped fretting about things that didn't really matter, I could focus on what was important. Who would have thunk a long-distance hike could change someone? When AT thru-hiker wannabes take that first step on the trail, the last thing in their mind is, oh, how will I learn and grow as a person, mentally, physically, spiritually, as I embark on this quest? Yeah, right. We're wondering where the water source will be. Did I pack enough food? Did I pack too much food? Will I be bare food? But once we devote our heart, mind and soul to the cult of the Appalachian Trail, for lack of a better term, miracles happen. Sometimes it's finding a blanket when you send your cold gear home and the temps drop unexpectedly. Sometimes it's having a view of a summit all to yourself. Sometimes it's meeting up with hikers you haven't seen in a while to traverse a treacherous section with you so you don't have to go it alone. Sometimes it's coming to a stash of water left by a trail angel when all the streams have dried up. But the biggest miracle, or taketh and giveth of the trail, is change. It takes away the beast within us and replaces it with a smile within the heart of the AT thru-hiker.